Writing a narrative of the trauma that you're working on with a young person is a really helpful tool. For some young people, this will be used in place of imaginal reliving. For example, if they are reluctant to engage in imaginal reliving or dissociate often. Building a written narrative can also add to the work undertaken through reliving. It allows the young person to consolidate their account of what happened, identify gaps and misunderstandings, and understand the worst moments in the trauma. Writing a narrative is a slower process than reliving, with more time to identify specific thoughts and feelings. It is also easier for the therapist to ask questions and probe about specific details. There's no one way of producing a narrative, and the medium you use is really up to you and the young person. Working on a laptop or tablet, a whiteboard, pen and paper are all fine. The young person can do the writing or typing, or the therapist can. If it is more appropriate, the young person can work on producing a cartoon of what happened, as long as there's plenty of space for thought bubbles. The written narrative can also be in either the first person present tense or the past tense, depending on what the young person is more willing to engage in. It can be helpful to start by clarifying where you're starting the narrative and when you're ending it. The end will ideally be when there's some clear sign the threat was over and or at least significantly diminished.
Okay, Karim, so because this memory has been a lot harder to talk about, really understandably, and because it's been one where you've dissociated a couple of times, instead of doing that kind of imaginal reliving, I thought we could either write about what happened or draw about what happened. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we wouldn't need to do any of the sort of first person present tense talking, and we'll still go at your pace.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to write about it, draw about it, a mixture of both?
Can we write about it?
Yeah, let's write about it. And we've got pen and paper or the laptop. What would you prefer?
The laptop.
Okay, so you've got a choice. Either you can type and sort of just type the story out as it comes to you, or you could narrate it to me, so tell me what to type. What would you prefer?
Can you type?
I'll type. It always makes me think I need to ask you to be looking at the screen when I'm typing, though, just so that you're not doing that avoiding. But also so you can tell me if I've typed anything wrong.
Okay.
Okay? So I'll type, but you're going to still focus on the screen. All right? So just to begin with, maybe start to narrate to me some of the background, like where you are, how old you are, and sort of just what was happening just before the trauma really got started. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're ready, I'm going to start typing.
The therapist and young person build up the story of what happened in the trauma. As with reliving, the key objective is not only to clarify what happened and the sensory details the young person can recall, but also the thoughts and feelings they experienced at the time. Going through the account more slowly gives space and time to identify key information and worst moments, and to spot any gaps in the story. The therapist should feel free to ask questions and explore aspects of the account. In particular, there may be important elements of the account that the young person has skipped over. This is not necessarily because they are being avoidant, but because the memory is a real blur. While working on Karim's narrative, the therapist explores one aspect of the trauma that he has possibly skipped over.
This bit here where you've said you can see that everything's just completely smashed. Just wondering, what did you think at that point?
I thought he was just destroying everything. I was just destroying my life. I couldn't cope.
Okay, that sounds really difficult. Can we add that in?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And that actually sounds like a really powerful thought. Sometimes we have really, really powerful thoughts in traumatic moments that might just rush in. They might just be there for a split second, and yet they're attached to such strong feelings.
Yeah,
Would this be one of those thoughts?
definitely. Yeah.
How were you feeling at the time then? What's that strong feeling?
I was quite sad. I was annoyed that he was just ruining everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's add that in.
Okay.
So I was feeling really sad. I was annoyed that he was ruining everything.
Yeah.
Okay, well done. And would this be one of the worst moments in the memory? Would it be a hotspot that we need to underline?
Yeah.
So we don't have to just underline it. We could make it bold. We could do whatever you want to make it really stand out so you know it's one of those worst moments.
Yeah, let's make it bold.
Okay.
Underlining or highlighting worst moments is important for the next stage of processing the trauma memory when trying to update the memory with new information. Adding more information is something that can continue in the next session, or the young person can review and add to the narrative between sessions. It's not unusual for understanding the full story to take more than one attempt at writing, as more moments, thoughts and feelings are recalled. Forwarding an electronic copy to the young person or printing off a double-spaced document for the young person to add material to will help them to work on the narrative between sessions. It can be really helpful at the end of treatment for them to keep a copy of the narrative they've produced. Feel free to be as creative as possible when working on the narrative. As well as underlining, using different colours can highlight different elements of the trauma or material the young person has added during homework. There might also be pictures or drawings they want to add to their story. Next, we see Karim and his therapist revisiting the narrative to add updates in. When updating a written narrative, memory and meaning updates should be written into the narrative in a different colour.
Okay, so just looking at this bit, what do you know now that you didn't know at the time?
Well, I know that I'm safe now. I survived.
How do you know that?
Well, I know I'm still here. I know the doctor told me I wasn't that badly injured.
Okay, so these are updates. We need to put them into your story and we need to make them stand out from all of the horrible bits, okay?
Okay.
Do you want to use a different colour?
Okay.
What colour shall we use?
Pink.
Okay, so I'm just going to start to type in those bits that you said. Does that look okay?
Yeah.
And what do you know now about whether or not Al is destroying your life?
Well, he's not here anymore, so he's not affecting my life, so I can...
How do you know?
Well, now he's not around, I don't have to worry about him. I don't have to think about him.
And what have you been doing since that are kind of things that have suggested your life's not being destroyed, but actually it's being quite built up at the moment?
I'm able to hang out with my sister and my cousins.
Brilliant. Let's add those in.
Okay.
Okay. So it's really good that we've put those in a different colour because we're going to read through the whole story, the bad upsetting bits and the new updates. And I want you to really kind of allow the memory of everything bad to come to mind, to be there, but to also then really focus in on these updates as you read them out.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Well done.
The therapist and young person can then read the full narrative with updates through. Prompt the young person to allow the trauma memory to come to mind, and then, as with typical updating, to say, read, imagine, or act out the updates. It is helpful to repeat reading through the whole narrative with updates, taking it in turns with the young person to be the one who does the reading. Sometimes when young people do the reading, they focus more on reading the content correctly rather than allowing the trauma memory to come to mind and then focus in on the updates.